What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome to the Clarity to Consciousness podcast. I'm Kristen, and I'm so very grateful to have you join me today. If your gut told you to listen to this episode, congratulations, you're already primed for our topic, which is intuition. So, what's the official definition of intuition? Well, I looked up the definition in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and it states that it's an instinct, an innate sense of what's true or what will happen. I always found intuition completely fascinating, and also I think it's something that goes underutilized. It's something that I've been working on developing for years with the help of my guest today. So, our guest is a spiritual teacher who specializes in intuitive development, supporting others in developing their own intuitive gifts, which can help us in our lives both personally and professionally. She's a coach, a motivational speaker, an author, and a pioneer in the spiritual healing community, and she's often called the healer's healer. She works with individuals and groups, teaching tools to help them reach their highest potential emotionally, spiritually, professionally, and physically. And for more than a decade, she's worked with thousands of clients, witnessing their transformations through her methods. I am so thrilled to introduce you to someone who's helped me tremendously on my path. Please welcome Colleen St. to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. That was a lovely introduction. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. And yeah, good. I'm so glad that you're here. So before we get started with intuition, I was hoping that you could give the audience a little bit of background on you and how you got started off on this path.
Excellent. So it wasn't scripted. I mean, I didn't think in my high school yearbook I would be a spiritual guide or an intuitive coach, because even though I was intuitive, I didn't actually know that it was intuitive. I was told that I was just too sensitive, or that I was just, always observing, not living life. And it was interesting how the path actually opened up for me in a very blessed time, but it was not that I was seeking it. It sought me because I was going through a lot of transition. Like, I was kind of flatlined. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't happy. I was just kind of status quo. And I did know that there was areas in my life that I felt that grief that I wasn't going to achieve. I felt like always in my gut that I was going to bring purpose into the world or help people, but I just didn't really have an idea of what that looked like. So one day I was walking through a bookstore and a book flew off the shelf, and it was in the metaphysical section. And being raised Irish Catholic, that was kind of like the voodoo section. You stay away from that. Anything that wasn't in, the church scripts, then it was out of script. And so when that happened, it got my attention. And how often do books fall off shelves at people other than in the movies? So
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. And I looked down and, saying my Our Fathers to myself, and I saw that the book was called Messages from Your Angels. And I thought, well, that doesn't look horrible. It doesn't look, and the curiosity, and again, what I now know, instinct, told me to pick up the book. And I bought it and I hid it like I had a dirty habit, and I didn't let anybody know what I was reading because I was unsure. But I was mesmerized by the pages. I felt like the words on the page were like a direct alignment with my heart, where it explained how we all are intuitive, that each of us has this innate gift that we're born with. If we're born with the soul, we're born with the wisdom of the soul. And that's the language of our soul's path. No matter who you are or what you do for a living, it is inherent in all of us. So my passion just became like I couldn't quench that thirst. Like I was passionate about things. Like I was always good at things, but never really had that passion. It was like I was hooked and I just wanted to learn more. I wanted to know more. I wanted to, you know, really work that muscle. And I developed my intuition to heal my own life. And I practiced it to heal the areas of my life that I wasn't listening to. I was constantly frustrated that like nobody listens to me. Like I may speak, but like no one hears me. I can say this, but like everyone walks by, like I'm invisible. And it's because I wasn't listening to me. It's just we're a reflection living our outside worlds based off of what we're doing within our own selves. And I realized that I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to that voice that was speaking through me and that was, giving me impressions all the time when my gut would tighten up, when my chest would get tight or my throat would get tighter. I hear like in my thoughts, that's not good for you, and consistently dismissing it and not trusting myself and then getting frustrated that I was not being heard or not being respected or not being listened to. Well, I wasn't listening to me, so then why would anybody else? So I then recognized the power that it had on my world. And I looked at them like, why aren't they teaching this? Like, why aren't people talking about this? And why aren't they teaching this in schools? Like, why are we taught to be sheep and just follow one another? Why are we taught that our worlds revolve around our FICA score, our SAT scores, our this scores, and yet we're all these beautiful individual fingerprints living our soul's purpose in this very tight container. And it suffocates us. It suffocates the soul. So I looked at intuition as my freedom. It gave me freedom to be my own unique blueprint and to take steps that naturally would have scared the heck out of me. And I could talk all day on intuition, but just because it's so powerful and it's universal. Like my partner was he just retired from a federal agency after 33 years. They call it their gut, the hunch, the instinct. It's like the sixth sense. We have business where they call it instinct, savvy. There's books written on business savvy. Well, their savvy is intuition. So it's not separate. It's just whatever you call it to connect with it is how it aligns with you.
So would you say you were born with the sixth sense?
Well, it's interesting because intuition is called the sixth sense, but in reality, it's our first. Not everybody is born with the ability to hear, to see, to have those senses. In the physical world, not everyone is necessarily born with them, but we all are born with this soul that has our intuitive gifts inside to help lead us in our journey. I call it when we're souls in the afterlife, we are in soul school. And when we come into this evolution, we are in earth school. So we take the lessons from soul school and we apply them into earth school so the student, which is the soul, can grow.
I love that you put it that way. It's really our first sense, which I had never thought about before. That's so interesting. So what led you to become an intuitive teacher then?
So what led me to become a teacher, I can back that up a bit. What led me to open a business was that I felt like I was holding the secrets of the universe in my head. And I really my life changed so much by shifts of thinking, shifts of how I perceive something, how limited I perceived things, how my awareness was kind of dulled in a sleep-like state rather than being in a heightened awareness where all those impressions that I felt were actually trusted information. And when you start applying these small little steps and trusting these little steps, and like anything else, we're an infant in a new beginning, right? So if we're learning to develop our intuition, we have to honor that infant that we're learning how to trust. We're learning to pick up those pieces that create the story that is leading us to trust on a deeper level. So I was just in love with the progress that I made. And I also am connected through my intuition through a spiritual guide. And I just looked around and thought, how many people felt the way I felt? How many people felt hungry, but didn't know what they were hungry for, or felt like there was something missing, but they didn't know what it was missing, or felt ungrateful because, societally we can look at now, it's like, okay, I have my health, I have my children, I have the ability to do this. So we often limit ourselves when we start to think, do we have the right to feel unsatisfied when we have so much to be thankful for? And the soul wants us to keep dreaming, keep bringing in the new experiences, keep taking on the new classrooms of learning and growth. And society has kind of told us to be a hostage to, you get a job, you stay in it. you do this, you follow through. We weren't taught how to do self check-ins to be like, am I satisfied? We just keep grinding through it. So I really wanted to open the practice to help people to know that they are more powerful than they have believed that they were, more capable than they've given themselves credit for, more important than maybe their job situation has let them feel, and it's really been an incredible metamorphosis for me because, it started out with seeing, people, and then growing that business and realizing that as a teacher, we can reach more people. And so I loved seeing, I was grateful I met you as my client and was so grateful to have that, it's almost 15 years as a one-on-one practitioner, but always loved the teaching aspect of it. And I felt that I was different in my teaching methods because I really had no experience in understanding any of this and was self-taught. So being self-taught was, a corner I don't want anyone to rock in. However, being able to offer someone support and kind of give the cliff notes and like, okay, here is what this means, or here's what this experience, and then creating very practical methods to have people implement into their busy lives. Because when I started this, I've been a single mother for many, many years running a business. I understand that, I don't have time to sit under a tree and meditate for 10 hours out of the day and, let life move around me. I wanted people to understand that this was the whole part of them operating in life rather than just the fragmented pieces of themselves trying to fit into life.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I so appreciate your teachings because it's been, as I can speak personally as your client, it's been so helpful to have somebody guide you, in a process that helps you build on your own skill set. I think that
Right. And you've
that's
done
something that I do.
beautifully.
Thank you. So,
But look at that. So
mhm,
here's just
mhm.
like this domino effect of everything. It's like, so, a book hits me, I buy it, right? So, and I listen to that, inner nudging and saying, okay, it's like, just buy it. It's a book, and
Mhm.
then the book spoke to me. And that's like, then I invested all of like my passion and everything into developing this. Then I get to meet really great people like yourself, right? And then you then build something, and then you have this beautiful podcast. So that's how we grow as a collective when we start understanding we're not in competition with each other. We're in this unity consciousness in which, okay, I'm getting my stuff together to be the best version of my essence so that I can like hold Kristen's hand, and then she's going to be the best version, and then light it up like a grid because we're stronger in that aspect. And, you know, we don't compete with our fingerprints. And that's the world's, misunderstanding, is that a lot of people are in competition with each other, but they're journey jumping. They're rubbernecking on someone else's journey and abandoning theirs, right? Because
Mm.
nobody has our blueprint. And so intuition is the GPS that gives the coordinates to our blueprint. And if we're always stuck on rubbernecking, on looking at what everybody else is doing and finding themselves to feel envy or jealousy or whatever that may be, we're actually a thief to our destined path that we're meant to be on.
Such a powerful lesson that,
Oh,
and I'm really grateful to hear that from you and be reminded of that. That was really great. So I would say the majority of people can understand when we're talking about intuition, they can relate to something, I think, at least one point in their life. They've had that gut feeling. And, you hear the phrase, trust your gut. I'm just wondering if we could try to relate that to what we're talking about today. What does trust your gut or trust your intuition mean from a spiritual standpoint, from your opinion?
so, it's so interesting because it's why it goes so easily missed, right? So I was a nervous, anxious person. So when they would say, trust your gut, I'm like, well, my stomach always hurts. Like I always had some kind of unsettled feeling in my stomach. So I wasn't sure, like, is this trust my gut that this is like a real impression of something? Or is this trust my gut, like, I'm going to have a stomach ache because I'm nervous? Like I had a hard time differentiating between that when I first started. So the first thing I can share with the listeners is if you're uncertain with your intuition and what direction to take. So let's just take it, you're making a personal decision. First thing you want to do is shield your energy. Right? And that can be as easy as, you lock your car door before you go out, for the evening. You lock your house up because you don't want people to break inside. So our energy, our physical body is like our home or our car. It's the vehicle or the vessel that's protecting us. So when we shield and protect, all we're doing is locking the door up. So there's different methods you can do. You can, I choose Glenda the Good Witch. I put a bubble around myself, and in this bubble, I am observant and I'm not absorbent. So I don't absorb other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions, because often, we are all energy. And when we meet people, it's like that instinct of like, there's something that doesn't feel right with that, right? Well, that is a cue or a ping that your impression is telling you that it's not necessarily like, a lot of times people go to like, I don't like their vibes. I don't like their vibes, right? You may not just like their energy of that day. It doesn't make them a bad person. They just may be having a bad day, and you're picking up on that energy. And then you may feel like a hard stop, and it's like, there's something that I just don't trust. That, knowing that is what is to be listened to. Now, how do we respond to that? We don't just be like, put walls up and blacklist them from our life. We are responsible of how we then respond to that energy. Because often what happens is we get that energy, like something doesn't feel right, and then we run in the burning building. And we end up getting burned. And then get mad at ourselves that why did we not pay attention, right?
So, or why didn't I listen to myself?
Yeah.
Yes.
And if anyone's listening has ever said to themselves, why didn't I listen to myself? That is your intuition. So we already know it works, right? So be positive with yourself. It doesn't mean that you worked out for you. It just means it was existing. So when you shield your energy, it's like, you're creating a space that is sacred, so that when you go into other spaces, you're not absorbing what others are feeling or thinking or what they're not showing, especially if you're an empathic person, which means highly sensitive to situations, peoples, and energies. Now, you're trying to make a decision, and first thing you want to do is do like, what are you trying to make a decision about? And then be aware, what am I attached to? Are you attached to the outcome? Are you attached to fear? Are you attached to, if I do this, it's going to affect this person this way? When we're really kind of polluted with these attachments, it creates static in us actually trusting our intuition, because we have a right brain and a left brain. Our intuition is our left brain. And what happens is that we're always used to being trained by the logic, right? Does it make sense? And our logic was created from all of the things that we programmed it with. Is this safe? Is this okay? Is this, so the logic is an intuitive and intuitive intelligence are balanced when they're in harmony. But we often were taught just to listen to our logical intelligence and avoid the intuitive intelligence. To tell the difference when you're making a decision, your intuition will lead you in the road or the direction less traveled. And that's where the fear comes in. Mm-hmm. So if you keep getting this pang in your head, okay, so before I started my business, it was Colleen, open a business, open a business, open a business. I consistently kept hearing it. My logical self said, Colleen, you're raising your kids by yourself. There's no way that you can do this. You'd have to leave your job. That's your security. That's your this, your this, your this, your this. So my logic shut it down every time. But I kept hearing it over and over, right? So your intuition, when it gives you inspirational ideas, will be consistent. A thought that just keeps kind of circulating or marinating through your body, just gentle. It's a subtle conversation. Whereas your ego is not necessarily your ego, is your amigo, because that is going to remind you of all the fears you have. It's going to remind you of all of the failures you perceive as failures. It's going to remind you that, people are going to laugh at you. Don't remember in second grade when you got up for that thing, people laughed at you. It's like we're assaulted by our own past and our own fears. So when our intuition is speaking through us, or a feeling of making a change is occurring, it's up to us to understand, is this a voice that is scary or is it gentle, right? So if it's the scary, it's like ego out, because that's not your truth. So how do we work with the intuition or the inspiration that comes through and harmonize it with our logic? Is the logic loves research. So when you are getting an intuitive ping or a plan or a change, right? So many of my clients are just like, I'm just not happy, but I don't know what to do, so I don't make change. So the fact that we have is, number one, you're not happy, right? So that's letter A. Once you can say, okay, it's okay, I accept letter A, I'm not happy, right? So what the mind does, it takes you B to Z and makes it a horror show. What your intuition does, it presents letter B in a very gentle, loving way. So step B would be, okay, well, what do you want? What would you like? It starts kind of asking you to get to know yourself better. And that's how you kind of make the choices, building your confidence with going independently through each letter. The mind wants a plan A to Z. And if anything goes out of line in that plan, somehow we failed with this, right? Intuitive impressions or intuition comes through gentle guiding steps. So it gives you letter A. Once you digest letter A, then you're presented with letter B. By the time you get to letter D, you've already built a trusting confidence that letters A, B, and C, and D did not destroy you, right? And it's not impressions that are impulsive. The ego works off of impulsion. Just get it over with, get it done, rip the Band-Aid off, right? Whereas our intuition, our inspiration, the way they come through, it comes through as patience and processes and thoughts of like, okay, well, if I'm being guided to leave this, what does that look like? Let me do the research to see what that looks like. Or if I feel unsatisfied in this job, but the world says that the market is bad and I can't leave and I should just be thankful I have a job, we're always going to shut ourselves down if we listen to just that limitation. Mm-hmm. But then if you start, you know what? I'm going to be willing to be willing. I'm going to maybe hire a headhunter or start investigating myself and see what could be out there. I'm going to ask myself, do I even want to do this job? Right? So many times people get inspiration that they're to go back to school, but they look and they're like, oh, I don't have the money for it. I don't have this. I don't have that. But when they start doing the research, they say, oh, wow, I didn't know this grant was available. or
Mm-hmm.
a scholarship comes through in a different way. So if our soul is in alignment with it, we're also going to be presented with the opportunities to make it reality.
Mm.
Does that make sense? So it's like you think
Yeah.
about, we are working through the fear of the unknown, but when we create the unknown, it's created from a scary space, and then
Mm-hmm.
our intuition can be like if you're dating, right? And you're used to dating someone and you had a relationship that didn't work out. So now you have fear. So
Mm-hmm.
you might want to just get out there and start dating again. You haven't addressed any of the feelings that you have. You just don't want to feel uncomfortable or don't want to be alone. So you start dating. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then you meet someone. It's like all these things are going off inside of you saying like, oh, I'm not sure, but you keep pushing it down, making excuses for it. Well, then you end up in the same situation that you just got out of, and probably a little
Right.
worse. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's the idea of, why didn't I listen to myself? It's like, when did we stop
Mm.
trusting ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
When, and you don't want to ever ask why questions, because why questions of other people will drive you insane. It's like, why would someone do that? Well, it's because that's where they're seeing life. Why would someone hurt me? Why would somebody do this? Why would somebody do that? To heal ourselves through intuition, we want to say, well, when did I first feel like that? Or what experience did I first recognize that I didn't believe in myself? And when you do that in our investigation, your intuition is like the top investigator wanting to give you the support information to help you with that.
Mm. That's really helpful. I mean, I think all these tips are really helpful in helping us determine how to trust it, and decipher the difference and understand when we're getting an intuitive ping. I'm curious from your perspective, like who, I'm using quotes, like who from your perspective is giving us this information?
So we have a higher self, right? So I think we've spoken about this before, that sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
we get this uh, inspiration, right, coming through our intuitive self, I had a hard time just accepting things at times. Like sometimes I'm like, I want the evidential proof.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because like I had never seen a spiritual guide. I had never seen anyone in the metaphysical world prior to me opening my business. And I know that's usually like the backwards way, but I didn't trust people. So I was trusting of the information I was getting, but I wasn't necessarily trusting of other people. Right. So
Right.
I was not my avatar when I started my business of like, that's who opens a business that they've never actually had a service of that business. Right. So it was really about trusting myself. So who am I speaking to? It's like we have to look at ourselves as we're density, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when we come into this world, we are a resident of the universe coming into this physical world. And when we come into the world fully, we have an umbilical cord, right? That dissolves, right? And that brings us into a full citizenship here on the earth plane. Well, when we cross, we have a soul cord that then releases us from this plane and then returns us back onto the other plane of existence. So in that time, we have a physical body doing a human experience, but as a soul or spirit. So when we say, who is it that we're getting information from? Our intuition comes from our higher self. So we have a lower self and a higher self. And, psychology can go into many different directions with it. But our higher self, into receiving information and actually believing information, I always looked like there was a higher version of me that was either on a ladder or a plateau and was like looking ahead and be like, girl, we did it. The path is clear. Like, come on. By the time
Yes.
she came back and told me that it was safe, she had already done it because she was ahead of me, higher me. And it was coming back just to report the news to me that it was safe and that it was okay to walk. That was a way that I kind
Yeah.
of like tricked myself
Yeah.
into um,
Mm-hmm.
trusting on such a deeper level. right? And so
Mhm.
whether you're connecting with angels or spirit guides or guides, everything is spoken through your intuitive channels. It all starts with intuition. Healing is
Mm.
how we heal. It's, guidance of making change is how we heal. Whether someone is a skeptic or doesn't identify with the words intuition, it still is in existence within them, right? And each of us has our own wake up time that we start connecting with our intuition. Not everybody is, I don't want to say on a spiritual quest, right? Because we're all on a human quest, but not everybody is meant to do the same mission, right? So you could have super highly aware, intuitive people, but they may not be in a spiritual healing field, right? They may be just in their field of interest. It goes hand in hand with mindset. In business, mindset coaching is huge. It's like shifting your mindset. Well, your intuition is a part of that, right? Because you're raising your vibration to have a perspective that is seeing life through a higher perspective. And that's all through your intuition as well. So
Mm.
um, I love a lot of CEOs do something called morning pages. It's where,
Mhm.
they are like kind of mind dumping and having these conversations. And that's all through intuition, right? It's like inventors. Einstein was one of the biggest supporters of intuition, and just believing that intuition was your greatest asset in doing any adventure. And so whether a person decides to open a spiritual business, they're a therapist, a coach, whether they're, a sports figure, they always say, oh, my gut told me to like go this way. Like I could feel like all of it's intuition. Business, it's built off of intuition. Instinct is intuition,
Mm.
right? Without it, we would be just blah, we would just be bubbles of
Mm.
bodies kind of not doing anything, because
Bodies.
just like a blobs
Yeah.
all over. So
Would you say the most successful people are really in touch with their intuition, regardless of industry?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's like
Mm.
I, I think about books, right? How many authors will say they were woke up in the middle of the night and then a book just streamed through them? The author of the Harry Potter series, right? Her story is very
Mm.
interesting of, you know, waking up having a dream about a book and then writing it, right? Look at our lyrics that are written for the music, right? Everyone's like, I was inspired by, right? And they're talking about things. Inspiration is intuition, right? It's all of our
Mhm.
creative channels. Artists will, feel something coming through them. Someone has an innovative, right? So innovation and intuition can go hand in hand, right? Someone has an innovative idea to build something or design something or take what it is that has been developed and create it to do more, right? So all of technology is built off of, in a sense, an intuitive perspective of the way technology works, right? So it's like all of it is just interconnected. And if you're not connected with yourself or a direction, you're disconnected or disassociated from the world around you as well. Because you can't fully connect with the world around you if you're disassociated with yourself. Nature is intuitive. Why are we the
Yes.
smartest things in the entire planet? But yet, when there's a tsunami, those elephants are running up the mountain. They feel it,
Right.
right? So, like, imagine if the wild kingdom of animals didn't live off of instinct. Like, lions would not feel prey, and it's everything is instinct. As far as they say, animals in nature, about even being a parent in nature, like a mother's instinct or mother's knowing intuition. We all have it. And we're living beings and we're just connecting in with another form of our intelligence to create the mind, the body, and the soul connection to bring in any avenue of life that you're choosing to live.
Well, with that being said, I think, if there are people out there who want to be successful, I feel like building your intuition is a great way to start.
It's
And
true.
I was wondering if you could help us today with any exercises or any techniques, any quick fixes, anything that you can share that can help us
The one thing I
be more
have
intuitive.
really come across is that the number one blockage is that people say that they can't quiet their mind,
Hmm.
right? Like their mind compels them to believe. And so I had a noisy mind, like a really noisy mind. I have a noisy mind. I don't even want to use the past tense. Like I have a noisy mind and I have ADHD, and it's been a blessing for me for this aspect because I can get a lot of different channels talking and connect with it. However, the people believe that their mind has to be blank to begin something, right? So,
Hmm.
or that their life has to look really zen and really quiet, right? So, first thing you need to do is just meet yourself where you are. I remember when I was learning going to meditation groups and everybody was laying down on their yoga mats. And I'm like, I like totally love the environment. I was like, this feels so good. Like I just felt great. I couldn't get out of my head. Like the whole time I'm laying there, I was like, you shouldn't be laying here, Colleen. You should be at home. Oh, Colleen, you got this to do. Or Colleen, you have that to do. It was like this constant like assault that I was having. And then when the meditation was over, everybody in the room was like, wasn't that amazing? Like I just was floating on a cloud. I was here and I'm like, I couldn't get out of my grocery list. And it frustrated me because it really did not help me believing and that I could do anything that was out of my mind because I was just so conditioned to just be in my own head. So to break that process, I remember that, I at the time I was a spa director. So before every treatment I did with a client, I always did breathing exercises with them. And in that space, I just remember always being super still, super quiet. And I was like, well, wait a minute, I can do that for myself. So I would start off by just saying, take 3 deep breaths in, hold it, and let it out. Like actually allow yourself to hear the exhale. That audio experience of you hearing your own breathing is going to just relax the mind. So guess what? My mind can be still in the moment. Doesn't mean my mind is dead all day long and I can't function. It just means that in that moment, I can breathe myself into a still moment. So when you're looking to connect with your intuition, do not do it when you're like in a loud environment. When you're first learning, don't do it if you're under the influence of, alcohol or some kind of any other things. I would avoid doing it if you're feeling an enormous fear or panic, because often people are like, I ask intuitively, I didn't know what to do. Panic is a vibration that shifts you out of alignment with yourself, right? So in that moment, it's like, okay, Colleen, what do I need to know, right? You may hear one word, it may be calm, breathe. You can do it. Like something that is supportive. If it is support, it is coming from your higher self, your intuition. If it is condemning, it is coming from your ego. And that's one way, a trick that you can say, what's it saying to me? If it's coming at me and going hard at my ego, like just, like if someone was following me, being so cruel to me, I wouldn't want them with me or listen to them. So when your ego is speaking, it tends to be very hurtful, or it tends to be very like negative. When your higher self or intuition is speaking, it may be one word. It may be just breathe. It may be just love. Maybe exhale. Like it could just be very small snippets that are going to help break through the density that is blocking us from trusting it. Another exercise that people can do is being mindful of shielding their energy, and I do an exercise with my students that is what if, right? So historically, if we're into making decisions and I said, okay, well, what if? People will rifle the negative out at me like crazy. Like, what if I fail? What if I do this? All the worst case scenarios is always on the tip of their tongue. intuitively, to shift our energy, we can always say, okay, well, what if? What if it does work out? What would that look like? And that helps us to shift the energy of believing in possibilities. So what if it was successful? And what if, and what's going to happen if I do make this decision? And not every piece fits together the way I want it to, but it comes together the way it needs to. What if, right? So I always say when we're working on our intuition, often we're automated and just going into the negative, we call it the pros and cons list, but we typically avoid the pros and focus on the cons. And if you can just check in with yourself and ask, okay, what is this supporting me? What is all this negative uncertainty? How is that supporting me? Because they're all not real scenarios, right? True fear happens like if we are being chased by a tiger. That fight or flight is there for a reason to help us get the heck out. But when we live in that consistent state of fear of making change, we are disrupting our nervous system, we're disrupting our cortisol, we're disrupting life and its natural flow, and we're allowing force to control us. We need to force situations to happen to keep them fitting into that picture we thought we were going to live. Does that make sense? So exercises, breathing. I really, truthfully, it's just, if you're new, just start with a minute of breathing, right? Because everything is about giving and receiving. And if we're not breathing and we're holding our breath, well, we've just put pause on the energy that allows us to receive.
Hey, Clarity Seekers. My conversation with Colleen was so interesting that we decided to break it into 2 episodes. Please continue with us on the next one as Colleen and I clarify what it means to be clairvoyant, how intuition helps us find our purpose, and how to trust the intuitive pings you're getting. Until then, thanks for listening. Before we part ways, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for tuning in. Your curiosity and openness make this journey all the more meaningful. As we navigate the realms of consciousness together, please follow our podcast for more captivating conversations. If you enjoyed what you heard, why not share the love, rate and review on your favorite platform, and help us reach more seekers on this enlightening path. And hey, the conversation doesn't end here. Dive into the show notes for additional insights, resources, and details about today's discussion. Your journey to clarity continues beyond this episode. Thank you so much for being a part of the Clarity to Consciousness community. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the boundless possibilities of your consciousness. Take care and much love to you all.